Hi there, this is Sereno Sky again. Sorry, it's been a while that I've posted the reading and continuation of a Lone Traveler novel, um, which I'm reading here to you free of charge. For those interested, my second novel, Lonely Traveler Part 2, can be ordered on most online bookstores around the world. But my reading here of my novel is free of charge. So, short explanation, I've been this summer to a couple of festivals, including the Ozora Festival. Had my grandkids here for a couple of weeks, drove them back home, spent some time browsing through the Swiss Alps, northern Italy, and the Adriatic coast, and through the Slovenian Alps, which I visited for the first time. Now I've been back, had to catch up with a few things, but now I should be able to continue reading a little bit more periodically. The chapters that are still missing in this project. So I get right into it without much ado. So this chapter 9 called A Place Called Paradise. The next morning, after some breakfast, we took the train to the Barcelona airport and checked out the flights for that day to Tenerife. We found one that would leave at around 11 in the morning, which would bring us to Tenerife in time to catch the last boat for La Gomera Island at 7. Since the price sounded okay, we happily bought our tickets. For both of us, it was our first time on a plane. When we got lifted up into the sky, we felt like having left everything behind and going to land somewhere different and starting a new life. Tenerife seemed quite dry, especially the south where we landed. There wasn't much lush greenery, but we had sort of gotten used to that already on Formentera. We did notice though the many cactuses and palm trees everywhere, which we both really enjoyed. We caught the bus to Los Cristianos and walked over to the port where we bought our tickets for the ferry. The boat ride is only about an hour long and one can already see the island of La Gomera from Tenerife. There were quite a lot of hippies on the ferry, as well as some regular tourists and locals. It was a refreshing ride on the ship as we let the sea breeze blow through our hair. We had a much better view of Tenerife now and could see the majestic Mount Teide in the back with its snowcap. San Sebastian is the port city where we got off the ferry. We were told that it was too late to get to Valle Grande. There was no more public transport there that night. So we were looking around for a cheap pension to spend the night. San Sebastian is the capital city of the island, but looks more like a village than a city. After finding a place to stay for the night, we went out to get some food and started talking to a hippie couple eating next to us. We were informed that there were basically two ways to get to Valle Grande. One was with an old boat called Alcatraz, or else by bus over the mountains through the rainforest. One could also try to hitchhike, but there are very few cars going there as the roads are bad. We had heard the same thing before from Jacqueline. I really want to see the rainforest, that must be gorgeous, Anne suggested. So the next morning we caught the early bus. It was amazing how it started driving upward, curve after curve, to finally about 1,000 meters high. San Sebastian could eventually look like a small spot down by the ocean. The vegetation seemed to change after every few curves, from cacti to palm trees to all kinds of bushes and trees. And we saw so many incredible rock formations. What I found very interesting was that you could see palm trees growing on small ledges and some big rocks. It looked so amazing. We saw small houses spread out with goats and some vegetable gardens where people basically live apart from the rest of the world. As we entered the rainforest, it was just amazing as all trees were covered with moss from top to bottom and they seemed very lush and green. We were told that it's the fog up here that keeps things humid in this forest that consists mainly of bay trees. And sure enough, there were mystical clouds of fog sweeping over the rock formations and over the trees. At one turn, you would see a mountain, but when trying to see it again after the next curve, it would already be covered in a cloud of fog. The fog was moving around fast, which made this place look very much alive. At some places of the road, the rainforest was so lush that the trees had intertwined with the trees on the other side of the road, causing the bus to drive through these green tunnels. Going back down the mountain on the other side of La Gomera was quite a ride. Overlooking the whole Valle Gran Rey was a thrilling experience as it was full of palm trees and greenery. Slowly the bus made its way back down to sea level. With some breathtaking curves, the road was only partially tarred, so it was a bit of a rocky ride, and Anne was holding on to me more than once. "This valley is so beautiful," she said in astonishment. It was indeed, with small villages on the side of the valley and very lush gardens in the middle where there seemed to be a riverbed which was dry at the moment. "Yes, Anne, it does really look like paradise." Though I couldn't compare, as it's just an expression we use for a kind of place we wouldn't want to leave. When we got out of the bus, we just followed the other hippies down to Casa Maria, where we had some lunch. Casa Maria was sort of the main hangout, and there were quite a lot of them sunbathing at the beach in front of it. We found out that many hippies would either find themselves a cheap pension or go sleep at Playa del Ingles, while some more adventurous ones would go to a remote stone beach with natural caves that was called Bay of Pigs. After discussing with Dan, we agreed that we would both prefer sleeping under the stars to begin with, and so we made our way towards Playa del Ingles. It turned out to be only about a 15-minute walk. The first thing we noticed were the beautiful sand dunes just before getting to the beach, with nice greenery on top of the sand and around the dunes. People had built small stone circles everywhere, which were apparently for protection from too much sun or from the wind. The beach itself was very rocky, with plots of black sand in between and tremendous waves splashing against the rocks. At the further end of this stony beach there were high cliffs, and right behind us this 500-meter high mountain ascended. We needed to really raise our heads to look all the way to its top. It was standing so tall and with birds flying along the rocks. No road led any further. We felt like we had arrived at the end of the world. Any stone circle that is abandoned, you can just sort of claim for yourself and put your stuff in there. Some hippies mentioned the unwritten rules of the land upon our arrival. So we got settled into this beautiful stone circle, and we're happy to put our backpacks and sleeping bags down between these rocks. Anne had this colorful Nepali drape, which she put over for some shade. We had noticed that almost everyone on the beach was nude, and so we just did the same. It wasn't the first time I'd seen Anne nude, but she was just stunningly beautiful. I had to actually sort of look over to the mountain behind us so as not to appear staring at her. We made friends with a young German couple who were in the stone circle next to us. Their names were Ben and Claire. Then we went to cool down a bit in the water. There were some places where the water had been splashing in over the rocks. It was so good to feel the salt water again. From what we had heard, swimming out in the water there could be dangerous, and some people who hadn't heeded the warnings had already paid with their lives. So whenever we wanted to go swimming in the future, we would go to some other beaches that were much safer. It was a wild place, but the wilderness held its own attraction. As the sun was setting, a few people were gathering with a guitar and drums, and we sat down with them to watch the sunset over the Atlantic Ocean. It had been a long trip getting here to what seemed like the edge of the world, far away from the hectic life up north, but it seemed worth it. Anne was leaning her head against my shoulder, and we both watched the sun as it was trying to keep its last golden rays from falling and to let their golden glow shine on for as long as possible. We were quite tired from the trip and went into our sleeping bags soon after. It was such an extraordinary day with that exciting bus ride and then driving down this heavenly valley. Anne was holding and caressing my hand as we were looking up into the endless starry sky and listening to the waves crashing nearby. She moved closer and snuggled up to me. I felt very blessed having Anne with me and feeling her warm body through her sleeping bag. It was getting a bit chilly as the sun had disappeared a while ago and the heat it had left on the rocks and the black sand had now cooled down. With this wonderful feeling of closeness to Anne, I finally dozed off to sleep. I felt like all these gorgeous waves splashing all over me and carrying me away into eternal bliss. I must have slept quite long because when I woke up, the sun was already up from behind the mountains and shining on my face through the drape. Anne was sitting right outside our rock circle, enjoying the crashing of the waves. She had woken up about half an hour before I did. Apparently, we both had slept very long. I sat down beside her as we were looking at the sea for a while and then decided that we would go look for some breakfast at Casa Maria. We only took our documents and money with us as we felt quite comfortable to leave the rest of our belongings at the beach. The crowd that was there didn't look like they would steal from us. A few other people we had met the night before came along too, so we were quite a happy crowd arriving at Casa Maria and ordering some cortado leche leche, which is a coffee specialty on the Canary Islands. Anne was hungrier than me, and she ordered a tortilla, while I was happy with just a croissant. We all sat there watching the first hippies who were coming to set up their colorful towels to lie on. Playa Maria was more public, and it wasn't a place where people would spend the night. Generally, it seemed the locals were very friendly towards the hippies. This could be partly due to their general open attitude towards life. Living very secluded from the rest of the world here, the people just lived from fishing and a bit of agriculture, so anyone coming to visit them seemed to be something that brought a bit of life into their seclusion. Later on, I realized that many of the locals here were quite spiritually oriented, and that could be another reason that they sort of liked us hippies coming here. Some more regular tourists had started to find their way to Valle Gran Rey as well, which had brought in a bit of money without any mass tourism. End of chapter 9. Have a nice day.